First of all, I just want to say, I'm alive, and you're all witnesses.
I'm getting attacked by birds.
Just minutes ago, have you ever had the unsettling feeling that you are watching the world shift into an era we were long ago warned about? What we are witnessing today feels less like random history and more like a profound sequence of events finally coming to light. Suddenly, the sky above Jerusalem changed, with clouds over its most sacred sites gathering in strange, unmoving shapes as if the atmosphere itself were bracing for impact. There are even whispers that the rise of advanced artificial intelligence is playing a role in the current Middle East conflict, acting as a catalyst for a confrontation that feels almost inevitable. You get the sense of being a witness to a momentum no one can stop as you watch rockets streak across the sky of a city central to the faith of billions. The ancient scrolls of the prophets are being mirrored in the headlines of today, and the horizon is filled with the weight of these unfolding revelations. Before we go any further, if you feel the gravity of these times, share your thoughts or a word of hope in the comments below. From the ancient walls of Jerusalem, you can see the trail of missiles slicing through the air above ground that has been revered for millennia. This is not just another regional dispute. This is Jerusalem, a city that history tells us would become a heavy stone for all nations. Today, we see reports of explosions perilously close to the Temple Mount, while sirens fill the old streets and worshippers are forced to pause their prayers to seek shelter. It makes you wonder why the entire world is constantly drawn back to this one specific location. The answer was written long ago, suggesting that the city would eventually draw the attention and opposition of the entire world, and that reality is no longer a distant thought. Impact zones are being confirmed near the Dome of the Rock and the Western Wall, places that serve as the spiritual cornerstone for humanity. War is now physically interfering with prayer in the very cradle of religion, threatening sites believed to be the location of the crucifixion and resurrection. The stakes could not be higher, as a single direct hit on these monuments could change the course of human history forever. Just yesterday, Prime Minister Netanyahu called these events historic, noting that the nation's standing has shifted significantly on the global stage. Even more remarkable are the messages circulating about the arrival of a new era of leadership and strength in the face of these escalating dangers. These statements have provoked heated discussion globally, with some seeing it as a sign of military confidence, while others hear the echoes of a much deeper, ancient calling. While some interpret the recent statements as a sign of an approaching era of peace and fulfillment, others find a different kind of concern in a leader who reappears to speak of transformation and alignment with global forces, while characterizing the current moment as historic. We must recognize that the balance of global power is not just a human game. As the ancient records of our ancestors in the Book of Job tell us that the very foundations of the earth are laid by a divine architect who can shake the pillars of heaven and make the mountains tremble. This makes us wonder if we are witnessing a mere matter of political survival or a profound shift that aligns with the ancient promise of a new heaven and a new earth, especially considering the timing of these events. With missiles over Jerusalem, strange signals in the sky, and escalating international tension, the proclamation of authority linked to a global superpower takes on a much deeper significance. Is this simply a display of self-assurance? Or is it a part of a larger pattern unfolding in real time as global attention is rocked by eerie noises, reverberating through the city and black crows circling in agitated waves? Fear is growing as people seek safety, uncertain of what this mayhem signifies for the future of Jerusalem. These atmospheric anomalies and the sudden appearance of these omens suggest a disruption in the natural order that mirrors the warnings found in the visions of Ezekiel, where the valley of dry bones begins to stir and the wheels of a divine chariot turn within wheels in the sky. Before we continue, please take a moment to engage with this message so that others may also seek to comprehend what is happening. A marvelous yet unsettling event has taken place recently as deep, metallic noises have begun to roll across the sky near the western wall, sounding heavier and stranger than any airplane or thunder. These vibrations, reported from Tel Aviv to Petah Tikva, carry a low, resonating energy that some describe as nearly melodious yet deeply disturbing, with no obvious source identified by local authorities. Witnesses claim the ground itself seems to react to these echoes, which sound like a distant, calling shofar of the great day, much like the walls of Jericho that felt the weight of a sound before they crumbled. This phenomenon is not limited to one region. Similar reports are surfacing across multiple continents, leaving people terrified and searching for answers. In the sacred scrolls, such sounds are often described as the voice of many waters, signaling that the silence of centuries is being broken and the seals of the hidden era are falling away. These are not random noises. They are alerts and announcements that suggest the arrival of a significant moment in human history. To understand the gravity of this, one must look at how these sonic phenomena are coinciding with the physical movements of nations and the sudden, unexplained behavior of nature itself. The reports from the streets of Jerusalem describe a vibration so intense it can be felt in the chest, a frequency that bypasses the ears and strikes the soul, leaving even the most skeptical observers questioning if the boundary between the physical and the spiritual is finally beginning to dissolve. When the sky speaks in a language of iron and resonance, and when the leaders of the world shift their rhetoric toward the absolute and the permanent, the coincidence becomes too heavy to ignore. This isn't just a local disturbance. It is a global awakening to a reality that was foretold in the deepest layers of our collective memory. The echoes in the sky are not just sounds. They are the alarms of the watchman on the wall, a call to wake humanity before the stones themselves cry out, and the sequence of events moves from the realm of warning into the realm of the great purification. As the ancient texts warned that the sun would be darkened and the moon would not give its light before the great transition, we are now standing in the center of that very storm, watching as the shadows of the past become the headlines of our present reality. Every report of a new vibration, every sighting of a darkened sky, and every political move made in the name of a new era serves as a witness to the fact that we are no longer waiting. We are living inside the unfolding of the scroll, watching the blueprint of a divine destiny be laid out in real time before our very eyes. Jerusalem has always been the focal point of these events, a city where it is difficult to ignore signs and where the significance of events extends well beyond the obvious. So when something strange reverberates throughout this country, people feel it rather than just hearing it, while scientists are still looking for answers regarding unknown sources, distant acoustic activity, and atmospheric pressure. However, no one response has adequately explained what people are hearing, leading us to wonder what exactly these sounds are and where they are coming from, or if these are the echoes of the trumpets described in the book of Revelation that signal a world in transition. Do you think these sounds are just natural phenomena, or is the earth itself trying to tell us something urgent? The sky above Jerusalem, once clear and motionless, is now full with ravens, crows, and flocks of black birds that are constantly circling and accumulating in quantities that are hard to ignore, creating shifting shadows as waves of dark wings move across the skyline. This is not a fleeting moment, and according to witnesses, the historic city was covered in shifting shadows as waves of dark wings moved across the skyline. reminding many of the warnings in the book of Jeremiah about the heavens growing dark and the birds of the air fleeing when the land is under great stress. People below have noticed the sound itself, which is persistent and restless. A heavy atmosphere that many claim feels strange and unnatural is created by a low, continuous movement that fills the air. People pause and gaze skyward, seeing the birds' endless, aimless, and patternless circles. While some cite environmental factors, climate shifts, migratory trends, or disturbances in neighboring areas, others point to pressure rising in neighboring countries and instability spreading throughout the Middle East. Yet the timing is what many find noteworthy because the sky itself appears to react to the escalating violence, missiles over Jerusalem, and mounting unease throughout the area. Have you ever felt like the world around you was reacting to the news before you even heard it? A time of emptiness was originally depicted in ancient scrolls. But now, rather than being empty, the sky is full of movement that is equally frightening in a city that is the intersection of prophecy, faith, and history. Additionally, it is difficult to ignore anything out of the ordinary that shows here. And then something else started to take shape while the sky stayed dark with birds circling, not gradually, not slowly, but all at once as a ferocious storm developed over Jerusalem. What little light was left was quickly engulfed by dense clouds, and in a matter of seconds, rain started to fall as the air changed and the pressure decreased, bringing large hailstones that forcefully struck cars, streets, and buildings, much like the plague of hail in Exodus that came with fire and thunder to shake the very foundation of belief. As ice hammered on stone and glass, witnesses reported hearing a piercing, unrelenting sound that reverberated throughout the city. And already disturbed by what they had just witnessed in the sky, they hurried for cover. And then something even more disturbing happened as the storm grew stronger at the same moment overhead where missiles could still be seen. The same sky now covered in hail and rain being punctuated by streaks of light. Can you imagine the confusion of standing in that moment while missiles and nature's fury were colliding right above your head? Weather and war were developing simultaneously, overlapping in a way that didn't seem natural, as explosions, sirens, and thunder all came together to create a single, incomprehensible moment that was confusing, not just frightening, according to the locals. As these weren't distinct occurrences that took place hours apart, but were taking place in the same location under the same sky at the same time. Some blame coincidence, military escalation, or the accidental intersection of two realities. For others, however, Jerusalem is not just any city. Therefore, the timing is what makes a difference because signs are taken seriously there. And moments like these are written in the prophecies of Ezekiel, where torrential rain and hailstones fall during times of great global shaking. The ground is shaky, the sky is active, hail is raining, missiles are flying, and the atmosphere is tense, shifting the emotion from distinct instances to a feeling of total convergence. What does it imply to you when the forces of nature and the forces of human conflict align so perfectly? Thus, the question becomes inevitable of what it implies when paradise and conflict coincide. And as the cacophony subsides and the sky calms, people start to focus on the ground, which is calmer but far more terrifying. Little fissures have started to show on the Mount of Olives slopes, initially thin and hardly perceptible lines over the earth and stone. But they have grown more distinct and noticeable with time as subtle indications that the ground stability has diminished. There have also been reports of movement close to the Eastern Gate, which is one of the most important sites facing Jerusalem's Old City. And although the changes are not spectacular or severe, they are nonetheless evident and being attentively monitored. This area is situated along a significant tectonic fault system, which is a component of a large geological structure that has sculpted the terrain over thousands of years, bringing to mind the words of Zechariah, who spoke of a day when the Mount of Olives would be split. Pressure is gradually increasing beneath the surface according to scientists, who claim that the Earth shifting, adapting, and releasing energy throughout time is a natural process, even though they recognize something significant about the timing. If the very ground of such a historic site begins to move, can we still trust the foundations we've built our lives on? Because these changes are not occurring in a vacuum, they are developing in tandem with everything else, including unrest, war, and odd signs in the skies, and now there is motion beneath the actual ground. Even the slightest change has always had significance in Jerusalem. And the Mount of Olives is not just any place, as it has a strong connection to events that have been discussed for many centuries. Scripture vividly portrays a future event where the mountain is partitioned. And while that moment is not yet what we are witnessing, the movement is sluggish and the fissures are tiny, but change is clearly present. Unexpected sinkholes have begun to occur beneath roadways, walkways, and places that used to feel entirely stable, giving way without resistance to what appeared solid moments before. Much like the account in the book of Numbers, where the earth opened to swallow what was no longer stable. The surface collapses inward as if it can no longer support itself. And these fissures are not at the surface level but originate from below, from deep-seated areas created over time by soil shifting, water movement, and erosion. These cavities go unnoticed and silent for years until they finally give way. And the collapse happens instantly when they do, with witnesses describing a typical day with no red flags followed by the ground falling abruptly. Does a scientific explanation satisfy your curiosity, or do you feel there is a deeper mystery unfolding beneath the city? Experts use geology to explain it, but again, the timing is noteworthy because everything else is taking place at the same time. As the sky became uneasy, storms appeared out of nowhere, odd noises reverberated, and pressure increased. Jerusalem is a unique location based on layers of meaning, history, and religion, and it modifies perception when the ground itself starts to give way, reminding us that the vulnerability has always existed, hidden, undetected, and waiting. Thus, the question becomes inevitable of what can be genuinely believed if the foundation can disappear. And the sky then starts to flare once more as lightning suddenly appears throughout Jerusalem in erratic bursts. The city was briefly illuminated by sharp, fleeting flashes that pierced through the darkness and vanished in an instant, much like the arrows of light in the Psalms that illuminate the world to reveal what is hidden. It doesn't have the typical storm's rhythm, as there is only abrupt illumination and silence, no buildup, and no obvious direction, with witnesses describing flashes over the old city and the hills that go on for minutes in an unpredictable manner. When you see a light that only reveals but doesn't strike, do you take it as a sign of hope or a final warning? Meteorologists cite changes in air pressure, but the pattern, or lack thereof, is not adequately explained by even those explanations because it doesn't feel chaotic. It seems intentional. Enough to cause people to pause, raise their heads, and consider what they are witnessing after the storm, after the birds, after the sounds, and after the ground has started to move. Signs have traditionally been taken seriously in Jerusalem, and when the sky above it starts to behave in ways that seem strange, people find it difficult to ignore it, as lightning can also be conveyed as a signal rather than just a natural force. What we are currently witnessing is not striking and doesn't destroy, it repeatedly reveals in brief. And because it feels like a signal with no effect, that might be what makes it more unnerving. Why do you think there is a signal in the sky but no strike following it? Then, all of a sudden, everything stops, not gradually, but all at once, as though the entire city has been put on hold by an invisible force, and Jerusalem is suddenly enveloped in a profound and total quiet. The wind that had been blowing through the streets vanishes, there are no longer any birds in the skies, and even the tiniest background sounds disappear, leaving behind an unnatural, almost weighty stillness. This reminds many of the silence in heaven mentioned in Revelation, a brief period of pause that carries the weight of everything that is about to follow. People notice it right away as footsteps hesitate, voices get quieter, and conversations slow down, stopping where they are because they sense an inexplicable change in the atmosphere. This quiet doesn't just happen, it follows the birds circling, the violent storm, the bursts of light, the moving earth, and the sounds in the sky, acting as a pause with no release and no continue. Does this kind of silence feel like the end of the story to you, or just the beginning of something much bigger? It is a silent awareness that something is incomplete, like a breath being held before something else starts. And every sign in Jerusalem has a purpose because such silence does not go ignored. Instead of being emptiness, it's a pause before what happens next. And that's what sets this particular moment apart, because there is no sense of emptiness in this silence. It feels full. Expectations and anxiety abound, not as the conclusion, but the pause before something starts. And then something even more subtle starts to shift as the water itself begins to act differently. Rainwater does not behave normally once the storm has passed, staying on Jerusalem's stone surfaces longer than anticipated, spreading slowly and staying as though the ground beneath is no longer absorbing it in the same manner. Little ripples start to form on their own, gently at first, then repeatedly, attracting the silent attention of those who see them as they are not triggered by movement or the wind. Bubbles slowly emerge from the surface in some places, just enough to be noticed and just enough to make people wonder about the hidden forces at play, but not in a violent or spectacular way, as they create subtle hue changes in the reflections that are hard to describe, yet difficult to ignore once they are noticed by the watchful eyes of the city's inhabitants. Each of these indicators can be discussed through the lens of complex water flow, subterranean air pockets, or surface tension. Yet in light of everything that has previously transpired in this sacred landscape, these small events start to experience a sense of community because they are not occurring in isolation, but as part of a larger, more mysterious sequence. One layer after another, the narrative tracks the heavy sounds, the circling birds, the sudden storm, the erratic lightning, and the heavy quiet, until even the water starts to react to invisible changes occurring deep beneath the ancient stone surface. Scientists would point to shifting soil or subterranean pressure buildup as natural processes that go unnoticed until minor symptoms show. But these changes are never overlooked in a city like Jerusalem, where even the tiniest detail carries immense weight and historical significance. Do you think these small ripples are just a geological byproduct of the recent heavy rains? Or is the environment itself trying to reflect a deeper, more profound shift in the world's spiritual foundation? This mirrors the ancient accounts found in the book of Revelation, where the natural world undergoes radical transformations, and the seas themselves are affected by heavenly events that change the very nature of existence for everyone who witnesses them. Water mirrors what is below, acting as a glass to the soul of the earth. And if the water itself starts to shift its behavior, it suggests that something foundational beneath it has already changed, turning global attention from current political events toward what might happen next in the prophetic timeline. For many, the question now concerns something much more profound, directly related to prophecy itself. Specifically, the continuous and heated discussion regarding the physical rebuilding of a new temple in Jerusalem, which many believe is the ultimate key to the future. Some believe that ancient scriptures make it evident that a rebuilt structure will eventually stand on this hallowed site, signifying the start of long-anticipated events that will reshape the entire globe. While others view the temple as a spiritual entity rather than one made of cold stone and mortar. This echoes the perspective found in the first letter to the Corinthians, which shifts the emphasis from a physical place to the identity of the people themselves as a living dwelling for the divine presence. People's perspectives on everything happening now are shaped by these differences, viewing the same conflicts, environmental anomalies, and social events through entirely different prisms of interpretation and faith. How do you personally perceive this? As a physical preparation of the land for a literal building, or as a spiritual awakening occurring within the hearts of the people? Rebuilding this structure has been planned, debated, and anticipated at various points throughout the long history of the Levant. Yet every single endeavor has encountered massive challenges or fierce opposition that hindered its advancement and kept it in the realm of dreams. This unresolved question becomes more significant as Jerusalem remains the ultimate meeting point of faith, history, and prophecy, where the past, present, and future appear to come together in a single, localized point of high tension. Now a pattern starts to emerge when we take a broad view of the situation. As events like war, localized storms, and shifting ground emerge sequentially in the same location within the same short period of time, creating a sense of urgency. This rising awareness brings to mind the words in the Gospel of Luke where it is said that, "When you see all these signs happening together, you should lift up your heads because your redemption is drawing near." We have one last question to ask ourselves as we witness these unfolding events. Are these truly isolated incidents of nature and politics, or are they the deliberate start of something much bigger than we can currently comprehend? Jerusalem has recently emerged as the world's center of attention due to remarkable and terrifying occurrences like swarms of locusts racing across the land, violent lightning storms, and enigmatic trumpet-like sounds that seem to originate from the sky itself. These events are seen by many not as mere coincidences, but as essential pieces of a prophetic image gradually coming to light, especially following the moment fire from the sky collided with the shimmering golden dome in a display of raw power. Can you imagine the weight of history and the sudden fear felt by those standing in the city as lightning struck such a disputed and sacred location during a time of such high tension? The prophet Isaiah once spoke of a visitation accompanied by thunder, earthquakes, and the flame of a devouring fire, an image that echoes through the modern digital footage captured of the strike that illuminated the night sky. The Temple Mount carries a weight that goes well beyond typical weather patterns because it serves as the foundation for multiple world faiths and carries layers of history that date back to the dawn of civilization, acting as a reminder that heaven and earth touch at this specific intersection. Beyond the lightning, we now look to another sign brought by tiny but powerful organisms that can devour vast regions of vegetation in a matter of days, leaving nothing but dust and desperation behind. Large locust swarms have recently swept through the region, darkening the skies with billions of insects and leaving fertile fields naked in a matter of hours, threatening the food security for millions of people in an already volatile area. This event acts as an ancient echo of the book of Exodus, where a destructive swarm was sent as a judgment, covering the face of the land until it was black and consuming everything that remained after the devastation of the hail. Does it humble you to realize that even with all our modern technology, satellites, and drones, humanity is still completely vulnerable to the smallest creatures in nature? The prophet Joel also spoke of these swarms as a great and devouring army, serving as messengers of the true fragility of human systems, and reminding us that plenty and scarcity are often decided by forces far beyond our control. These signs call for a deep and lasting humility, suggesting that the creators will continue to influence creation itself through both the movements of the heavens and the tremors of the earth. Everything points to one undeniable reality. From the appearance of rare and perfect red heifers intended for ancient rituals to the growing animosity of nations uniting in opposition against the existence of Israel. These are not isolated incidents, but fit together like parts of a complex prophetic puzzle with astounding accuracy, bringing ancient texts that were once thought to be metaphors into our current daily reality. Jerusalem is once again taking center stage in celestial affairs, And the world must consider if this is just a series of random coincidences or the deliberate hand of a higher power at work in the modern age. If you were standing in the heart of the city today, seeing the birds and hearing the sounds, would you feel a sense of dread or a sense of fulfillment as these signs unfold? One of the most significant indicators is the preparation for the Third Temple, a structure whose absence has been a source of deep longing for thousands of years, since the destruction of the previous holy sites by invading empires. The Temple Institute has been working for decades with dedicated scholars and craftsmen to restore sacred relics, including the golden menorah and priestly vestments, training those who would serve within its walls in the ancient ways. Modern interpretations of the letters to the Thessalonians suggest that the existence of this temple is a necessary precursor to the final sequence of global events and the appearance of a world leader who will change everything. This goal is now more real than ever in the center of Jerusalem, as the city prepares for a heavenly turning point that could alter our perception of the future and the end of the world forever. It is a time where the boundaries between the seen and unseen are thinning, and the water's surface is just the beginning of what is being revealed to those who are willing to watch and listen. The ripples in the water, the fire in the sky, and the movement in the earth are all coalescing into a single message that cannot be silenced by modern skepticism. We must look deeper at the historical accounts in the book of Daniel, which speak of a time of trouble such as never was, but also a time of great awakening for those who understand the signs provided by the heavens. As we watch the birds circle and the lightning strike the ancient stones, we are reminded that Jerusalem is not just a city of stone, but a city of destiny where every event is a heartbeat of a larger plan. The silence that follows the storm is not a void, but a presence that demands our full attention and a response from our very souls as we move closer to the climax of this age-old story. What if the events we are seeing are not warnings of a distant future, but the actual beginning of the final chapter we have all been waiting for? Every fissure in the ground and every flash in the sky serves as a witness to the truth that the world is in a state of transition, moving toward a moment of ultimate revelation that will leave no one unchanged. As the water remains still but full of ripples, we stand at the edge of history, waiting for the next signal that will confirm what our hearts already suspect about the days ahead. The appearance of the red heifers is the second definitive indication that the gears of history are shifting, for a temple alone is insufficient without the means to sanctify it. The Book of Numbers explicitly mandates that the sanctuary and its vessels must be purified before any sacred service can commence, and the key to this cleansing is something nearly impossible to find in the natural world: the ashes of a physically perfect, entirely crimson heifer. For nearly 2 millennia, not a single animal has met these rigorous divine standards, leading many to believe the tradition was lost to time, yet the silence was broken in 2022. 5 flawless red heifers, raised with meticulous care by a Christian farmer in the heart of Texas, were welcomed into Israel after receiving official approval from high-ranking rabbinical authorities. This news quietly sent shockwaves through global religious circles, raising a profound question: why would a believer from a different tradition participate so deeply in an ancient Hebrew custom? Do you think this cross-cultural cooperation is a sign that the world is aligning for a singular purpose? Or is it merely a series of historical coincidences? These animals are now kept under the most stringent conditions imaginable to maintain their absolute purity, as Jewish tradition dictates they must be of a specific age and completely unblemished by even 2 hairs of another color. This implies that we are no longer just theorizing about the future. We are witnessing the physical activation of a bridge between the Old and New Testaments, a living link between ancient law and a destined future currently unfolding on a quiet Israeli farm. The third indication involves the nations that stand in opposition to Israel, echoing the ancient words of the prophet Zechariah, who foretold that Jerusalem would become a heavy stone for all the nations, causing injury to any who attempt to move it. In our modern era, we observe a growing and unmistakable animosity toward the Jewish state, manifesting as political coalitions and international pressures designed to isolate and confront the city of destiny. This is not a random geopolitical shift. It is the exact unfolding of a battlefield of prophecy where one single city has captured the undivided attention of the entire planet. When you see the world's leaders focusing so intensely on this one small piece of land, do you see it as a political struggle or the fulfillment of a much older script? A truly incredible event recently took place in Jerusalem that marked a turning point in contemporary history. For the first time in the modern age, a red heifer was offered as a sacrifice. This was not merely the revival of a lost custom, but the beginning of a countdown that the Bible has warned about for thousands of years, leading many to ask if we are witnessing the actual threshold of the second coming. The shut gate, the approaching messianic expectations, and the ashes of the red heifer are no longer distant theories. They are active realities. Do you believe we are standing at the end of an era, or is this a spiritual rehearsal meant to prepare our hearts for a different kind of change? On July 8, 2025, something remarkable happened in Shiloh, the ancient capital of Israel where the tabernacle once stood for centuries. Under the cautious observation of authorities, a full-scale rehearsal of the sacrifice was carried out, a ceremony with profound roots in the purification rites recorded in Numbers 19. One specific heifer had been chosen after years of preparation, but shortly before the formal act, a priest made a shocking discovery: a lone black hair hidden within the red coat. Because the law demands absolute perfection, that single flaw meant the animal could not be used for the final, official cleansing. But the leaders made a bold decision to proceed with a dress rehearsal. They treated the moment with absolute gravity. The priests donned their ceremonial white attire, the altar was meticulously prepared, and the wood was laid for the fire. Can you imagine the intensity in the air as the smoke began to billow over the same hills where the ancients once worshipped? Publicly released video from Jerusalem shows the flames rising into the sky and skilled priests performing the age-old rituals described in the Torah with surgical accuracy. From the specific handling of the sacred ashes to the subsequent ritual washings, every movement was a mirror of what the final sacrifice will look like when the perfect animal is finally presented. This moment is equally vital for those who look for the return of Christ, as the reconstruction of the temple is seen by many as a necessary sign of the Advent. This massive rehearsal in Shiloh proves that the preparation is no longer lurking in the background. It is genuine, it is physical, and it is happening right now. Does it change your perspective to know that the tools and the people are already in place, simply waiting for the final signal? The ashes are not merely symbolic. They are a mechanical necessity, required to purify the very people and tools that will build the third temple. For nothing holy can begin while the workers remain in a state of ritual impurity. Despite being called a rehearsal, the event was accompanied by eerie reports of enigmatic, trumpet-like noises echoing across the heavens, sounds that have recently been reported from all corners of the globe. Witnesses in Jerusalem described hearing loud, deep metallic blasts that seemed to vibrate through their very chests, echoing through the old valleys like the blow of a shofar. While scientists scramble for explanations involving atmospheric infrasound or seismic resonance, none can adequately explain the timing and the sheer intensity of these sounds over the city that serves as the stage for global prophecy. When the earth vibrates and the sky speaks at the same time as these ancient rites, do you look for a scientific cause or a spiritual message? These unsettling noises have been captured on video, leaving both skeptics and believers searching for answers in a time where the boundaries of the natural world seem to be thinning. Many believe these sounds are far more than a coincidence, especially when heard over the city described in the letters of Paul as the place where a final trumpet blow will signal a world-changing event. Every detail of the Shiloh rehearsal, the gathering of the ashes, the movement of the priests, and the preparation of the holy items, serves as a witness that the foundation is being laid for something that cannot be stopped. The world may not be prepared for what comes next, but the signs are being displayed with increasing frequency and clarity for those who have the eyes to see. As you look at the smoke rising from the hills of Shiloh and hear the echoes in the sky, what is your heart telling you about the season we are entering? This is no longer a prophecy of the distant past. It is a lived reality of the present, where the sacrifice of a red heifer has moved from the pages of Scripture into the physical world of the 21st century. The countdown has begun, and every ripple in the water, every fissure in the ground, and every ritual performed in the hills of Israel is a heartbeat closer to the climax of the human story. The final trumpet will ring, the dead will be raised imperishable, and we will be transformed in the blink of an eye. A powerful promise found in the writings of the Apostle Paul that serves as a haunting reminder that prophecy frequently reveals itself in ways that arouse the human heart when we hear echoes of trumpet-like noises in our own time. The symbolism of these sounds is incredibly potent, whether it is interpreted as a direct heavenly signal or explained away by modern science as mere atmospheric resonance. In the biblical narrative, trumpets were never just background noise. They were urgent exhortations like the shouts that brought down the walls of Jericho, calling people to awaken from spiritual slumber and acknowledge a presence that transcends our daily lives. The sound of a trumpet rolling across the heavens above Jerusalem today forces people to stop and listen in a world filled with innumerable competing voices. Yet the mystery doesn't end with the sound, because the sacred city's ground has started to tremble and flood with a strange, unprecedented intensity. When you see the ancient stones of a city that has stood for millennia suddenly overwhelmed by water, do you see it as a simple weather pattern or a sign that the very foundations of our world are being shaken? Images of severe rainfall turning small historic streets into raging rivers have surfaced from Jerusalem in recent times, showing shopkeepers battling to salvage their merchandise while cars were carried away by the force of nature. Residents had to wait through floods that flowed past stones that have seen centuries of history. And as these unexpected storms transformed well-known alleyways into pathways of devastation, the sacred city, often regarded as unwavering and unchangeable, exposed its hidden physical weakness. The floods were a sobering reminder to many that even a highly esteemed metropolis cannot escape the untamed forces of creation, leading scientists to speak about a much bigger threat: the seismic risk beneath Jerusalem itself. The Jordan Rift Valley, a portion of the vast Syrian-African fault system, runs beside the city, a tectonic line that has caused catastrophic earthquakes throughout history, much like the great earthquake in the days of King Uzziah that left a lasting mark on the memory of the prophets. According to contemporary seismologists, the question is no longer whether another significant earthquake will occur, but rather exactly when the pressure will finally reach its breaking point. This geological fact appears to be anticipated by ancient prophecy, specifically the vision of the prophet Zechariah regarding the Mount of Olives being split in two to form a massive valley that alters the very geography of the Holy Land. Is it a coincidence that one of the most significant prophetic sites in the world is situated directly on a major tectonic fault line? Or is this the ultimate intersection of science and destiny? Geologically, the mount overlooking the shut eastern entrance is primed for movement, making the possibility of a future earthquake both terrifying and deeply symbolic for those who watch the signs. Tremors and floods serve as a constant reminder of humanity's fundamental vulnerability. In an age where we create institutions, policies, and cities that we believe will endure forever. However, the reality of Jerusalem teaches us that all can be destroyed by a single rainy night or an abrupt change in the earth's crust, demanding a level of humility that matches our faith. For locals, these occurrences represent an experienced, visceral reality rather than abstract theology, as every tremor shatters the human notion of control and points toward a higher authority. Last month, observers across the Middle East raised their eyes to see a crimson moon, a rich red hue that brought back immediate memories of the visions given to the Apostle John on the island of Patmos, where the moon became like blood as the sun turned black as sackcloth. When the sky turns red and the earth begins to move, do you find yourself looking for political answers or searching for a deeper spiritual truth? Every action, treaty, missile launch, and policy signed in this region carries a deeper significance as the countries of the world begin to line up in accordance with ancient scripts. The strain is increasing, and Scripture specifies exactly what will occur when this worldwide strife reaches a boiling point, placing Israel at the absolute center of end-times events. Israel will survive into the final days and play a major role in a grand plan, evidenced by the fact that the nation was recreated in a single day in 1948 after being scattered among the nations like the vision of the dry bones coming to life in the desert. This event was a major precursor to the current situation where plans for a new Jewish temple are moving from theory into reality, a structure that the Book of Revelation suggests must exist during the coming period of global tribulation. While the site is currently under complex international authority, organizations like the Temple Institute have developed plans that could expedite the building process if the opportunity arises. Furthermore, the narrative of the final days describes a group of chosen messengers and two powerful witnesses who will preach with fire and authority in the streets of Jerusalem, an event that concludes with a tremendous earthquake, causing many to flee the city in search of safety. Can you imagine the scale of a transformation that begins with a single building and ends with the physical restructuring of the entire earth? The ancient writings of the prophets of Israel describe a future battle where a massive coalition of nations will unite to attack the land, only to face a miraculous intervention that many believe will happen in our very lifetime. This lead up to the final conflict at Armageddon suggests that a rightful king will return to rule from a throne in Jerusalem, eventually ushering in a new heaven and a new earth where sorrow is no more. While it is important not to see every single news headline as a definitive prophecy, the establishment of the contemporary state of Israel and the alignment of surrounding powers are impossible to ignore. A warning was given long ago to see that no one leads you astray, noting that rumors of wars, famines, and earthquakes are just the start of the birth pangs that precede a total restoration. Does the realization that we might be living through the birth pangs of a new era change how you prioritize your daily life and your connection to the divine? We are told not to be afraid, but the fact that so many ancient indicators seem to be converging shows how crucial it is to remain faithful and observant of the signs appearing in the heavens. The selection of Israel was intended to be a blessing to every family on the planet, as seen in the ancient covenant made with Abraham, and the fulfillment of these agreements is ultimately for the honor of a divine name. While this selection can cause visceral anger in those who clash with the concept of divine sovereignty, the restoration of Jerusalem is described as a moment of global recognition where every eye will see the truth. The process is compared to the pains of childbirth, a process that is undeniably painful but serves as a necessary herald for a new life and a new kingdom. The wheels are already turning, the foundation is being established, and the temple that has long been the focus of ancient dreams might be closer to reality than it has ever been in human history. The signals are all around us, from the depths of the earth to the heights of the heavens, asking us if we are ready to witness the conclusion of the greatest story ever told. It doesn't end there, and the air in Jerusalem is thick with a question that refuses to be silenced. When will the actual sacrifice take place if this current event is only a high-stakes rehearsal? Although no formal date has been announced by the authorities, it is evident from the absolute degree of preparation, the specialized attire of the priests, the years of rigorous training, and the obsessive attention to every last aspect of the rite that the transition from practice to reality is imminent. They are prepared, and their intense practice sessions are not in vain, acting perhaps as our last warning before the threads of time finally snap into place. Do you feel that a rehearsal of this magnitude is a sign of respect for tradition, or is it the final psychological preparation for a world-changing event? People everywhere are questioning whether and when the third temple will be reconstructed, concluding that in accordance with the visions of the prophet Daniel, the temple must be standing before the daily sacrifices are eventually stopped in the final days. The Bible offers a complex map of this construction, reminding us that after the first temple was destroyed, the Jews were held captive in a foreign land for 70 years, until the decree of King Cyrus started the process of sending them back to rebuild their broken walls. One vital aspect of this gathering of exiles is the building of the third temple, which acts as the secret key to the return of every soul to their ancestral homeland. Under the leadership of Ezra the scribe, a group of returnees began offering sacrifices to the divine even before the foundation of the second temple had been laid, demonstrating that an altar alone is sufficient for the rites to begin. Does it surprise you to learn that according to ancient law, the building itself isn't required for the sacrifices to start, only the sacred ground and a consecrated altar? A grand vision of a future temple is described in the prophecy of Haggai, which spoke of a glory that would surpass all previous structures. Yet the second temple lacked the physical and spiritual characteristics to fulfill such a massive promise. This leads many to believe that a temple will be constructed in Jerusalem before the final turning point of history. As the Apostle Paul warned that a figure of great deception would eventually stand in a holy place, claiming divine status for himself. However, we must understand that the final, eternal temple described in the closing chapters of Ezekiel is a structure of such immense proportions that it may only be realized during a 1,000-year reign of peace, built not by modern human hands, but by a divine act of restoration. Changes are taking place that will enable the world to quietly begin construction when the underlying global problems are addressed and order is restored to the earth, acting as a trigger for a level of global harmony we cannot currently envision. If a single building has the power to either spark a global war or create universal peace, how does that change your view of the headlines you see today? There is more to this messianic period than a shift in population. It represents a quantum leap in human perception, where things that seem ridiculous to us now will seem absolutely reasonable once the shift has occurred. The construction of the third temple is tied to the gathering of the exiles. A relationship that suggests global harmony depends on the restoration of this central spiritual heartbeat. According to the prophetic letters sent to the early churches, certain end times events must take place within a Jerusalem temple, specifically involving a leader who will exalt himself over everything that is called God. For these events to manifest, a temple must exist, even though the site is currently occupied by the Islamic Dome of the Rock, a place of immense reverence where it is believed a great prophet ascended into paradise. In our current political environment, it would be unimaginable for a new structure to rise there. Yet ancient texts suggest this will take place under a false protection during a period of great global hardship. When you see the impossible tensions surrounding this one plot of land, do you see a political dead end or a prophetic inevitability? The efforts to reconstruct this site are not a secret. The Temple Mount and Land of Israel Faithful movement was founded in the late 1960s by Gershon Salomon, a man whose lineage traces back to the pioneers of the 19th century. Salomon, a military officer who survived a miraculous ambush on the Golan Heights in 1958, claims to have seen a divine light after being struck by a tank, an encounter that convinced him his life's work was to prepare for the arrival of the King of Peace. He was among the troops that reached the holy site in 1967, and since 1989, his group has been attempting to lay a massive cornerstone for the new temple, driving these stones around the city every year to garner support. Simultaneously, the Temple Institute has spent over $20 million creating priestly clothes, a $30,000 golden crown, and an incense altar based on years of deep research into the mandates of the Pentateuch. Can you imagine the dedication required to spend millions of dollars on items for a building that doesn't even exist yet? They have crafted silver trumpets, golden harps, and a high priest's breastplate embedded with 12 precious stones. But the centerpiece is a $2 million menorah made of 95 pieces of pure gold. In 2007, this menorah was moved to a plaza overlooking the temple site, a symbolic migration that the Institute compares to the ancient vessels returning home after centuries of exile. To ensure the new generation is ready, they are even building a massive full-scale model near the Dead Sea to teach the priests the intricate rituals of the past. Christians and Jews alike are watching these developments with a mixture of anticipation and dread, looking for a figure who will arrive at a very gloomy moment to bring about a resolution to the world's chaos. Do you think the world is reaching a point of darkness that only a monumental spiritual event can fix? A reformed perspective suggests that the temple will be returned only when there is unending peace. But others believe we must descend further into devastation before the redemption of the globe can occur. Ancient tradition holds that a messenger like the prophet Elijah will arrive to proclaim the new era, traveling from the Mount of Olives to the sacred site to declare the time for the third temple has come. While God is technically present in every molecule and every soul, many believe they still need a physical temple to bridge the gap between religion and true spiritual awareness. As the gold is polished and the stones are prepared, do you see a return to old ways or a leap into a future we aren't yet ready to face? The signals are converging, the artifacts are ready, and the heartbeat of Jerusalem is quickening as the world moves toward a moment where every location becomes a temple and every soul recognizes the presence of the divine. God's will is the ultimate reason for the profound difficulty currently faced by those attempting to construct the temple. For every delay and every political barrier serves a higher purpose in a timeline that human ambition cannot override. Though challenging at first, everything will soon run smoothly as the pieces of the prophetic puzzle align with an intensity that will leave the world breathless. The third temple and the end of the world are inextricably linked, as the visions provided to the prophet Daniel and the warnings of the New Testament make it clear that for the Antichrist to fulfill his dark role, the sanctuary must exist by the middle of the 7-year tribulation. This implies that the temple might be constructed before the commencement of the tribulation or even prior to the rapture, creating a physical stage for the spiritual conflict of the ages. Do you think the sudden appearance of these materials and plans is a sign that the countdown to the rapture has already entered its final seconds? Jesus revealed the veracity of God's sacred message to the hearts and eyes of those who watch. From the foundational promises of Genesis to the climactic return in the book of Revelation, when he comes a second time to stop humanity from the brink of total self-destruction. He will seize control of the planet to rule as a righteous king for 1,000 years before creating a new earth and a new heaven where the old sorrows are forgotten. Praise be to God, for the world's sole hope is found in this promised return. One of the most crucial requirements for constructing the third temple was satisfied with the birth of the red heifer, an event that fulfills specific requirements for the temple to exist during the Great Tribulation. When the scripture speaks of the lawless man entering this temple to halt the sacrifices and establish a solid commitment for a week, it is describing a period of deception where an abomination is poured forth on the desolator. The Apostle Paul further confirms this when he speaks of the man of lawlessness, the son of destruction, who will defile the temple by taking his place within it and exalting himself against every object of worship to claim he is God. That day won't arrive until there is an uprising and the truth is exposed, so we must be careful not to let anyone trick us into a false sense of security. How would you react if a global leader suddenly negotiated the right for the temple to be built tomorrow? Would you see it as a miracle of peace or the beginning of the end? In the Olivet Discourse, Jesus mentioned this abomination standing in the holy place, warning that when this occurs, the people of Judea must escape to the mountains for safety. The Apostle John was even instructed in a vision to use a measuring rod to gauge the dimensions of the temple and its altar, though he was told to leave out the outer court because it would be trampled by the nations for 42 months. While the Bible does not give a specific calendar date for when the reconstruction begins, it states unequivocally that the temple will exist during the reign of the Antichrist. Given that the tribulation is a short period, many have concluded that the structure must be rebuilt beforehand, perhaps as a rapid tent temple similar to the tabernacle of Moses in the wilderness. The Temple Institute has already prepared the sacred vessels and is educating priests from the Levitical line to be ready at a moment's notice. The question of location remains a central mystery, as the Holy of Holies must be situated in the exact same spot as the previous two temples, leading to intense disputes about the precise placement on Mount Moriah. While the majority of academics believe the ancient temples stood where the Islamic Dome of the Rock now stands, others suggest the true site lies to the north or south. Without archaeological digs, which are currently forbidden, the exact site remains hidden, meaning the current structures might need to be dismantled by a divine act, such as a localized earthquake or a human conflict before the third temple can rise. If a natural disaster were to suddenly clear the site, would you view it as a geological accident or a divine clearing of the path? An increasing number of people are deeply passionate about this reconstruction, and a catalytic event like the finding of the Ark of the Covenant or a major political shift could spark a wave of national pride that demands the temple's return. There is compelling evidence that Solomon may have constructed the sacrificial altar in a way that would allow a future temple to be built north of the Dome of the Rock, placing it in what was once the Gentile court. This could be the answer offered by a future negotiator to settle the dispute between faiths, though we remain unsure of the final outcome. The birth of the red heifer satisfies a requirement that has stood for centuries, and while it must still be verified for the final sacrifice, the gear is already in motion. This temple will eventually be desecrated, but upon the return of the Messiah, it will be replaced by a fourth temple of even greater glory, described in detail by the prophet Ezekiel, from which a ruler will govern the entire planet in justice. The Lord's statements are clear and accurate, and for those who follow his message, a seemingly insignificant detail can impart a great deal of meaning when harmonized with the whole. Every day and every hour, the call is to become more like Christ, for all glory belongs to the everlasting Savior who is the true temple and the new covenant. Do you believe your own heart is being prepared as a temple for the truth while the world focuses on stones and gold? No one can approach the Father without passing through the one who was the last and perfect sacrifice, the truth and the way that leads to eternal life. From the east side of Jerusalem's Mount of Olives, he once ascended to heaven, and from that same sky, the world awaits the fulfillment of the promise that what was started in the ancient past will be completed in our very sight. The foundation is being established, and the long-anticipated reality is closer than it has ever been, reminding us to watch, wait, and remain faithful in a changing world. Heavenly Father, we come before you today with humble hearts, acknowledging that you are the creator of the heavens and the earth, and the one who holds the destiny of every nation and every soul in your hands. As we witness the signs appearing in the sky, the tremors in the ground, and the unfolding of ancient prophecies in the heart of Jerusalem, we do not stand in fear, but in the strength of your promise that you are with us until the very end of the age. We lift up a special prayer for protection over every family represented here, asking that you hedge them about with your divine grace and keep them safe from the chaos and uncertainty of these times. Grant us the wisdom to recognize the season we are in and the courage to stand firm in our faith as the world around us continues to shift. Do you believe that prayer is the ultimate shield for your loved ones during these prophetic days? May your peace, which surpasses all understanding, guard our hearts and minds. And may we be found ready and faithful when the final trumpet sounds and your glory is revealed to the entire world. We thank you for your unending mercy and for the hope we have in the return of the King of Kings, who will restore all things to their rightful place. If this prayer and these signs have touched your heart, please join us by leaving an Amen in the comments section below to stand in agreement for the protection of your family. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on all notifications so you never miss a single update as we continue to track these world-changing events together. Share this message with someone who needs to hear this truth today, and may the grace of the Lord be with you all. Heavenly Father, we come before you today with humble hearts, acknowledging that you are the creator of the heavens and the earth, and the one who holds the destiny of every nation and every soul in your hands. As we witness the signs appearing in the sky, the tremors in the ground, and the unfolding of ancient prophecies in the heart of Jerusalem, we do not stand in fear, but in the strength of your promise that you are with us until the very end of the age. We lift up a special prayer for protection over every family represented here, asking that you hedge them about with your divine grace and keep them safe from the chaos and uncertainty of these times. Grant us the wisdom to recognize the season we are in and the courage to stand firm in our faith as the world around us continues to shift. Do you believe that prayer is the ultimate shield for your loved ones during these prophetic days? May your peace, which surpasses all understanding, guard our hearts and minds. And may we be found ready and faithful when the final trumpet sounds and your glory is revealed to the entire world. We thank you for your unending mercy and for the hope we have in the return of the King of Kings, who will restore all things to their rightful place. If this prayer and these signs have touched your heart, please join us by leaving an Amen in the comments section below to stand in agreement for the protection of your family. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on all notifications so you never miss a single update as we continue to track these world-changing events together. Share this message with someone who needs to hear this truth today, and may the grace of the Lord be with you all.